They are the other candidates who take part in American democracy but often get overlooked by the media. For example, the race for Congress. In District 1, polls say Democrat Shelley Berkley will be reelected in a cakewalk. But Berkley technically has opposition. There's a Republican, an independent American, and a Libertarian vying for that office. Tonight we meet the Libertarian candidate. He is Attorney Jim Dunsing. Mr. Dunsing, good evening. Thank you for coming in. Why vote Libertarian as opposed to the two mainstream, I'll call them mainstream, as opposed to the two mainstream candidates? Why vote for you?
Because the Libertarian Party stands for traditional American values. The Libertarian Party is a party that is a party of citizen leaders. The Republican and Democrat Party, they talk to the people and they tell them every couple of years what they want to hear. But as soon as they get into Washington, they do what they're told to do by those who pay the bills.
If you look at the polls, I alluded to it getting into us here, Shelley Berkley has an enormous lead in this race, if you look at that. I mean, doesn't that indicate that that district really wants Shelley Berkley to represent them again in Washington?
Maybe, you can make that argument. But what I think it really indicates is there's a lot of people who will say, look, Jim, they've historically said, you know, I would vote Libertarian, but you guys can't win. And now more and more I'm hearing, Jim, I want to vote for you, and I've got nothing to lose. Because the Democrats don't represent me anymore, the Republicans don't represent me anymore. There's all kinds of Democrats who are saying, we shouldn't be in Iraq. Well, Shelley Berkley voted for the war in Iraq. There's all kinds of Democrats saying we shouldn't have the Patriot Act. Well, she voted for that too, without even having read it. So, the Democratic Party will talk to those people, and they'll try to convince them that they're different from George Bush. But on the most important issues this cycle, she voted for Bush's war, she voted for the Patriot Act.
I think if we had Berkley here, and I'm going to just play devil's advocate, she'd say, yes, I voted for that. But I voted for it at the time, believing that these were sincerely the right things to do. I voted for it based on the intelligence the administration was presenting to us, so I voted for it.
Well, on the war, the intelligence at the time was sufficient to tell you that George Bush was lying. Because it was evident to me as a radio host at the time, it was evident to anyone who cared to look into the national intelligence estimate. As far as the Patriot Act, if you don't bother to read the bill, how do you know it's the right thing to do?
Right. Let me ask you just a personal background question. What party have you always been Libertarian politically, or did you switch at some point?
I've only cast votes for Libertarian presidential candidates.
What do you see as the main issue of this campaign?
I think the main issue of this campaign is the direction of this country. We just today passed a bill to technically secure our courts, but what it did was it added the gambling piece of legislation to limit online gambling, and it also at the last minute added a piece that said if you are a convicted felon who's committed bribery or other felonies, you can still work in our court systems.
Why do you think, in your opinion, Congress is not doing the people's business? Why do you think that is?
I think it's largely because people have bought into the idea that there's only two choices. And most people, when you talk to them, whether they tend to vote Republican or tend to vote Democrat, they don't really do it because they're proud of their candidate. No one last election said George Bush is the most intelligent, articulate man for the job. No one said John Kerry is the most courageous person. They said, I really hate George Bush or I really hate John Kerry, so I'm voting for the other guy.
What do you say to somebody who looks at you and goes, I mean, what is your sales pitch? What is your response to, look, I like Libertarian. I mean, on many of the things, you and I line up, but you don't have a prayer in heck for winning the election, and I don't want to waste the vote. What do you say to that voter?
I would say a wasted vote is one where you're voting for something you don't believe in. I mean, if you're voting for somebody who's not going to give you the government you want, you're never going to get it.
Let's talk about the war in Iraq. What should we do there?
We should tell our soldiers that they did a good job. They deposed Saddam Hussein, which was the goal of the mission, and it's time to say mission accomplished and bring them home.
Do you worry at all that there will be a vacuum created if American troops leave too quickly in Iraq?
As long as America stays there, there's going to be a civil war. All the different elements of the Iraqi country, they've all unified to fight America. They've got their differences, and they'll settle those once we leave. But until we leave, they're going to continue to fight until we're gone. I mean, think about it. If China landed on these shores, all the differences we have as political parties, they'd be gone. And we would fight until that foreign enemy was out of our country. And then we'd settle those other differences. So the only way to end the violence in Iraq is to bring our soldiers home instead of try to put them in a nation-building effort, which I believe candidate Bush said he was opposed to doing.
What about the war on terrorism? You mentioned that you were not a supporter of the Patriot Act. And when you read the Libertarian platform, the Libertarian Party is not like the Patriot Act. So if that isn't the method to go forward, then how do you fight the war on terrorism? How do you make the country secure? How do you keep a watchful eye out for people who want to hurt us?
I mean, we're told that the people who attacked us on 9/11 did so because they hate our freedom. How do we become safer? How do we win that war? By giving away the freedom. Right? That's what makes us America, is that we're free. And if sometimes bad things happen, and they do, but freedom is what this country's about. And you're not going to be safe in a police state. It's just not going to happen. Ask a Jew in Nazi Germany if they felt safe.